You know, you always got to wait for that guitar to come in before you actually start doing the intro. It's the musical timing thing for the opening of the show. And in this case, the show is Dead Reckoning Radio. And Brian, you're giving me that look like, what are you...
No, I'm not. I'm just letting you introduce the show rather than jumping all over you and interrupting you like I did last week.
You were fine last week.
Bad. I thought
you were
I
fine
interrupted
last
a lot.
week. Well, this is Dead Reckoning Radio, and I am one of your hosts, Jay Friesen, along with...
Brian Mattson.
The Dr. Brian Mattson.
Dr. Brian
And then,
Mattson.
as always, the lovely...
Not a doctor, Hadley Manning.
Not a doctor.
I guess I'm Hadley Heath. I don't know.
Have we not decided on this yet, Hadley?
You were Hadley Heath Manning on that recent Fox News clip.
Yeah. They'll put all three names on the screen for me.
I thought we decided that we were going to do, I thought
Hadley
I was
Heath.
helping her determine this because she asked
You
me.
were
She's
helping
like,
me.
She was like, I just got married and I got all this. I'm like, yeah, I would go with Hadley Heath and keep the Hadley Manning off the airwaves.
Okay, I'm Hadley Heath.
It's
But
nice
you got to
to
tell Fox News that, though.
You know, it's nice to have. I think having is this whole aspect of your life that's private, like you've got a different last name, is actually kind of cool. But
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I
When I
agree.
started doing TV, actually, I kind of regretted that I didn't use like a stage name or something.
right.
Because then my name was just going to follow me around everywhere on all my legal documents, and
And
then
you
people could find me.
And then you'd be held accountable for everything that you said.
Right.
Which,
Which
you
is
know.
actually kind of a good thing.
I always wish I kind of had a stage name, and I went back and forth for a while with stage names and didn't end up sticking with it or whatever. But hey, such is life. Well, we've got a good show for you today. We've got we're going to be talking about a lot of things. We're going to be talking about social justice warriors, Free the Nipple. Latest
I'm sorry.
SCOTUS Watch.
What? We're talking about what?
Yes, we're talking about SCOTUS, Free the Nipple, Trump for president.
Free the what?
We've even got Nipple, Free the Nipple.
All right.
the
Well,
nipple.
I'm just gonna wait for that.
We've
topic
even got a couple new quizzes that I'm really a couple new game deals I'm really excited about.
Okay.
Not the Onion News and Nerd versus Nerd.
So Hadley and I are gonna be doing something.
Well, I'm certainly not the nerd
It's a competition,
Not-
Brian.
at all.
Who can out nerd?
But before
The
that,
other.
before we get to all that, Charleston, obviously the news of the week, the Charleston shootings. What are your guys' thoughts?
Go ahead, Hadley. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, it's obviously a tragedy and an act of hatred and violence. And, you know, I was really struck by the fact that he sat in the church for an hour. The shooter sat there and listened to their prayer meeting. But on the flip side, I've been blown away hearing the responses from the family members and the community in Charleston, the people who said in their court statements, you know, family members, you took someone from me. You took someone from me that I'll never be able to touch them again, to be with them again, but I forgive you. And I hope that you find Jesus Christ because he can change you, and we want to share eternity with you.
Isn't it wild? That's incredible.
What a witness.
It
you
is.
know, I was really blown away by the response, but of course, I mean, the event that took place, there's just not really, I don't really have a lot of words for that. It's just terrible.
One of the things that strikes me about it and is that we have lost our moral vocabulary as a culture. You know, we don't even have words for this anymore. We've decided, I guess, that things like evil, sin, those sorts of words are outdated and outmoded, and we can't use them anymore. So it's interesting how we reflexively always move immediately to psychological vocabulary and terminology. He's deranged. He's crazy. He's this or that. In fact, just last night I was talking to a friend who made that comment. He's like, well, you know, we're talking about gun control or something. Nothing's going to stop a crazy person. And I said, no, evil person. And he actually just kind of stopped and he looked at me. Yeah, that's right, evil. It's like that word doesn't even appear in our society anymore.
Didn't you put up a Twitter post about how they're going to try to do everything? They want to deal with all the other. Maybe I saw it on Facebook. They want to deal with all the issues except the moral one.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's going on. I think that as a culture and a society, when something this horrific happens, and it is so appalling, we don't really want to face evil head on. And so we busy ourselves with other things, like talking about guns or talking about, you know, a 150-year-old battle flag that once flew for the Confederate States of America, as though we're really doing something about the cause of this horrific event. And I think it's a distraction. I think it's a societal self-distraction. We don't really want to face the fact that evil exists. It exists in our own hearts, and people are capable of incredible atrocities like this. And it makes us feel like we're doing something to distract ourselves with these really ancillary topics. I mean, we can talk about the Confederate flag, we can talk about all of that, but I feel like it's being done as a substitute for really talking about the spiritual condition of our country.
Well, it's like pulling it's like cutting off the branch, and yet, it's like, hey, my tree is producing really bad fruit. I'm going to cut off this branch, and then it grows back, and there's more bad fruit on it, and there's other so we're just going to keep cutting off the branches, and we're going to ignore the real issue,
the roots
at play.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Hadley?
I mean, race is always one of those topics that I guess I spend a lot of my time talking about women's issues because I am a woman and I work for the Independent Women's Forum. And so people want to know what's my perspective on sexism, and I feel very confident approaching that topic because I am a woman. But I guess as a white person, I don't really, I try to listen as much as possible. I think listening is kind of a lost art. I don't know if this is really the prayer of St. Francis or if it's just attributed to him, but, seeking to understand rather than to be understood and seeking to love rather than to be loved. This is something I wish I could talk to my friends of color more about. What's your experience really like as a Black person? Do you feel like racism is still because this has really been even bigger than the gun control discussion and the discussion about the Confederate flag. There's this question of racism in our society. And I mean, I just think I've had friends throughout my life of all different colors, and I love them just as much as I love any of my other friends. And I just don't know how to have that discussion about what can I do to be, a force for good and reconciliation, and especially when it comes to race relations.
See,
am I feeling white guilt? Am I feeling white guilt that I don't need to feel? I don't know.
Well, that really brings up an interesting question, because I want to know why you're so reluctant. Why is it that you can't speak to this issue? No, but I think that there's the race discussion in America has taken twists and turns in directions that lead to unhealthy places. And one of those unhealthy places is white people terrified to speak about race in this country. I think that's a problem. I think that we should be able to talk about it as openly as anybody else. And identity politics has ruined that for us. Oh, you're a white woman? You can't speak about race.
Right. I think it was a comedian, maybe Chris Rock, who said something like, this is so crazy. We can't even look, across the street and point someone out and say, he's that Black guy over there. Like that, my friend Marcus, he's that Black guy over there. Right. We have to say, he's that man over there wearing red shoes. Like we have to find some other identifying characteristic, because I don't know. Are we supposed to be a colorblind society where we pretend like race doesn't exist? Are we supposed to celebrate racial diversity? Because to do that, we'd have to acknowledge that it does exist. And then in the midst of all this, there's this NAACP leader in Washington State.
Rachel Dolezal.
Yeah, who's intentionally tried to change her appearance, at least. Yeah. And she says she identifies as Black.
If Bruce Jenner can be a woman, Rachel can be Black.
Well, I fail to see any flaw in that logic.
Yeah, I just think it's a confusing issue, and maybe one that I just feel overly sensitive about. But I guess in order for me to ask one of my Black friends, what is your experience as a Black person in America today, I would have to acknowledge that they are Black. And I guess I'm supposed to just treat my friends like they're, I don't see your color.
But
I don't see that.
Again, the discussion, is all eggshells now. I mean, you can't even approach it without, committing some terrible faux pas, Yeah, you want to talk about race, but then you're acknowledging somebody's Black, and now you're calling attention to it. And, so it's such a mess. But we were talking earlier, Hadley, and you were talking about, one of the problems, too, is that, the kind of racism we saw in Charleston. I mean, this hateful little punk. Obviously, incredibly, cowardly. He's insecure. That is so obviously the fringe of our society, and yet so many people want to seize on this as some kind of an illuminating moment to illuminate how racist our society, when in fact it illuminates the exact opposite. He's a complete aberration. In fact, in his manifesto, one of the whole reasons he was doing is that people aren't racist enough here in the South. You know, and there's some acknowledgement that we've made a lot of racial progress in this country would be really nice. But too many people want to seize on this and make political hay out of it, I guess.
I was surprised to hear one of the state senators of South Carolina commenting on, I'm sure this was just a slip of the tongue, but he said something like, "This is the worst thing we've ever seen in Charleston." And I'm thinking
unintended.
It's definitely, this particular
war.
church was burned down, and there have been heinous acts of evil and hatred and racism. And there's a history there. And I think as much as I disagree with President Obama on a lot of things that he says, that history is not something that's easy for us as a country to move beyond. But I do think we've been making progress, and I guess I just feel like when I reflect on this, I want to be part of the progress, and I want to be part of the solution. I want to be part of, sharing communities and a country really where everyone feels included and welcome. And I mean, part of what I feel so proud of in this whole episode, and it's really a tragedy, there's very little to be proud of, but there's a woman named Debbie Dills who's a florist from very close to my hometown in North Carolina. She's a minister of music, and she went home from church on Wednesday night, her church maybe in Kings Mountain or Gastonia, North Carolina. But she saw the news and she prayed about it. And the next day, she's the woman who identified the shooter on Highway 74 West. And she was just praying as she was driving to work. She was a little bit late to work, and she happened to see this car that she'd seen on the news the night before. And this is a very sweet woman. Wow. She happens to be white, but she was part of bringing this shooter to justice, or at least bringing him to being apprehended by the police.
Wow.
And I've seen so many pictures from the response in Charleston, and it is black people and white people standing together, holding hands, praying. And I feel like there is a community and there is a connection, a lot of it because of our shared faith, and this is a woman who identified a lot with the Wednesday night attendees of the church in Charleston, because she was at church on a Wednesday night and she thought this could have happened to me,
It seems to me that there's a certain segment of society that that wants racism to be alive and well. Like I wonder if sometimes it's not as bad as we want to make it out to be.
Well, I do think like Brian mentioned, there's this aspect of our political debate that is pointing people against each other, whether it's the war on women and dividing men and women against each other, or dividing people into racial groups, or pitting religious people against non-religious people. I mean, I think that there is this us against them mentality that tends to seep into a lot of our debates and a lot of our discussions. But I don't really think that does us any good. If anything, it's again a denial that each of us is a sinner and each of us is capable of evil, capable of good too, through God's good grace. But I think people don't want to acknowledge that, and so they try to turn it into good groups and bad groups, and the conflict in the world is all due to conflict among those groups instead of the root cause of evil, which is sin and the fall. So yeah, I think it is a problem that we have race baiters, and we have people who would continue to talk about men and women as if we don't have shared interests, as if we don't have households and communities that are comprised of both men and women who want the best for each other. But yeah, that's always going to be, I think, part of our political landscape, because there are people who benefit, unfortunately, from pitting people against each other.
Speaking of people who are pitting others against each other, are you guys familiar with the term social justice warrior?
I'm familiar with the term social justice. I don't know what a social justice warrior is.
Well, I found one of the most perfect definitions on Tumblr. It's an anonymous post on Tumblr. The difference between a social justice warrior and an activist. An activist tries to get a ramp added to a building for easier wheelchair access. The social justice warrior tries to get the stairs removed because they might offend people who can't use them.
That's pretty good.
Perfect.
That is perfect.
That is perfect. That. So, in honor of this, so that's been trending a lot, I guess, on like Reddit and Snapchats and everything.
Social justice warrior.
Yeah, there's a picture of this little baby like with a Facebook shield and like a Tumblr sword,
Social
like
justice
crying,
warrior.
and somebody's trying to plug it, everything else. So we're gonna have a regular. I think we need to have, in honor of the stupidity of America.
Okay.
We need to have a regular social justice warrior of the
week?
of the episode
Of
the
the
episode, because we're like
episode.
bi-monthly. So this week's social justice warrior is Jane Marie. Jezebel.com. Now, Brian, I think you actually.
I think I linked this story.
Yes, give us the breakdown.
Well, the breakdown is this gal on Jezebel. Remind me of her name again.
Jane Marie.
Yeah, Jane Murray went to a tattoo parlor and wanted to get a big neck tattoo, and the tattoo artist refused and told her that he wouldn't do it. And she said, well, my money's as green as everybody else's, so what's the problem here? And he said, well, perhaps you don't really understand. No, she left. And then she went on Jezebel.com and wrote this huge screed about...
The article is, don't tell me I can't get an effing neck tattoo.
Yeah, okay. You can't tell me I can't have an effing neck tattoo. And so she just went on this tirade about how unjust this was. And really, what is really awesome about this story is the tattoo artist wrote a response.
An inked magazine.
Yeah.
Like, that's a major national magazine.
Tattoo magazine.
Like, major national tattoo
and he
magazine.
says, perhaps you don't understand, but tattoo artists are artists, and we belong to a guild, and there's certain ethics in our guild. And we, at our tattoo shop, our tattoo parlor, have pretty much a code against giving people... What did he call it? He called it, sort of like life-changing tattoos.
Yeah.
They're like life-changing tattoos.
Below the sleeve, on the
Giving
neck.
people tattoos in exposed areas when they are not tattooed up elsewhere.
They're not committed to the lifestyle.
Yeah, they're not like committed to being really tattooed. He says, I'm not going to help. I'm not going to put you in a position of not getting a job in a job interview because you got a giant neck tattoo on when you're obviously not part of like the tattoo lifestyle. So he made this whole apologetic about how apparently there's a code with tattoo artists, and he says you're not entitled to our artwork, okay? And it was.
But she wants to get the whole place shut down, and everybody goes
epic.
somewhere else. And
Couldn't she find at least one tattoo artist who was willing to go against that code for her green money?
Can't a lesbian find a different baker?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're a social justice
Didn't see
warrior,
that one coming.
when you're a social justice warrior,
yeah.
one piece of opposition must be destroyed. It doesn't matter that you have 100 other options, right? Destroy the man who turned you down.
I think the word for that is intolerance.
Ooh, ouch, that hurt. Burns.
Sorry, you guys.
No, that was fantastic.
the right-wing equivalent. So there's hashtag SJW for social justice warriors.
Right.
And the hashtag for people on the right that are despised by people on the left is RWNJ.
RWNJ?
RWNJ.
Religious wacko.
No, yeah. Religious whack job, not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right-wing nut job.
Nut job.
Right-wing nut job.
Right-wing
Oh,
nut job.
man.
Just
There
in case
are-
anyone sends that hashtag your way, you guys will know.
There
You
are
should be
right wing nut jobs. I mean, there just really are. I won't name any names.
But guys, we could be called that.
Oh, absolutely. I
Nut
embrace that
jobbery
term.
is in the eye of the beholder.
but I mean that there are people you could say it about with justice. Okay. Objectively speaking, there are nut jobs.
You are objectively a nut job.
Hey, let me ask you a question on that subject, Hadley. So this whole like trade bill thing, I can't figure out. Okay, I'm really trying to get my head around it. I can't figure out why all of the radical Tea Party types, right? I mean, even our friend Eric Erickson, right? These Tea Party types are all lining up on the side of the labor unions. Who's the rhino? I'm trying to figure out who the Republicans in name only are here.
Well, this has been there's this ongoing conflict about the whole like made in America, American jobs,
Right.
protectionism is what it's
right.
called.
And why conservatives would be endorsing that is beyond me.
We shouldn't.
Right.
That's my opinion. We shouldn't be. We should be
Well,
in favor of free trade.
I
We should
agree.
do as much free trade as possible, but
Give me the context. What are you guys talking about?
Oh, So anyway, yeah. Sorry, Jay.
Hey, normal guy over here.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot you were in the room.
Thanks. Thanks.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No. Well, the Senate, the Congress is deliberating over 2 important trade bills that Obama really wants passed, and the Republican leadership really want to pass. Now that's strange bedfellows in and of itself.
Yes.
The first time it came up for a vote, Obama got stabbed in the back by Nancy Pelosi and by his own party. They screwed him over.
Poor guy.
Well, so on the one hand, you've got the left wing doesn't want it, the labor unions don't want it, and then on the other hand, you've got the Tea Party types railing against this, giving Obama these trade authority powers. And I'm like, these are, man, talk about a world of strange bedfellows. You now got, the Tea Party guys are lining up with the labor people. That kind of tends to indicate to me maybe that these trade bills are probably good ideas.
Or there's money behind it.
Well,
There's money
I
involved.
just don't think it's as big a deal as everybody's making it out
Is
to
it
be.
is it something, Hadley, we should be writing to our senators and congressmen about?
If trade is one of the most important issues to you, I mean, it should be an important issue to everyone, I guess. But I'm gonna say that because I'm a public policy wonk, But I guess, yeah, this is just one of those where, like a lot of debates, people like to line up against their enemies.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think on the right, they're not seeing their enemy here as being the labor unions and Nancy Pelosi or even Obama. They see their enemies being Mitch McConnell and John Boehner. They don't like this is sort of an intra-Republican fight.
right. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's going to be some conservatives who, no matter what the issue is, if President Obama is for it, they're against it.
I got you, right.
And there's going to be the same thing happens on the left side of the equation. If Republicans are for it, there's going to be some people on the left wing, regardless of what the idea is, they're going to be against it. Example, I think we're going to talk about this in more detail later, but Planned Parenthood is against over-the-counter birth control. Riddle me that one.
Hey,
it's because a Republican is for it.
It's because it cuts into their profit margin. But we'll talk about that
we'll
later.
talk about that. Yeah, that's coming up. But I mean,
Sorry.
can we de-elect these people? I mean, this is not helping America when you're just opposed to something because you don't.
I think what we need to do is change the voting laws. I think you should have to pass some kind of basic civics exam to be able to vote in this country. Now, I'm saying that kind of tongue in cheek, but it's scary. The kind of
I
people
think we
who
should
vote.
have term limits personally, because I think that would
I
help
love
root
the
out
idea
some
of
of
term
the
limits.
corruption in government, and we would have more fresh faces. We'd have more people participating in Congress and in elected office in general.
I was
people
asked to
from
be
other
on
walks
the-
of life.
I'm
was asked to
sympathetic
be-
to that, but I think there's other sides to that too that kind of makes sense. I mean, term limits are also limiting the influence that your representative is going to have, and I don't know. I'm
But they'd have to be
sympathetic
applied
you.
evenly, so they'd
True.
limit the
I was
influence
asked
all
to be on
representatives
the, I was
have.
asked to be
True.
on the Billings City Council.
Oh man, you were asked to run for city council.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Can you
Wow.
imagine what a disaster that would have been?
That's a raucous group, man. We just had a
know.
non-discrimination ordinance thing last summer that blew up the city council.
Yeah, it was crazy.
The town was being torn apart over that. It was bad.
And I don't know if I was a part of city council, and Hadley, you might be able to speak into this because you're a public policy wonk. I don't know how I would feel about the breastfeeding in public issue. Reason.org has actually named it as possibly the civil rights movement issue of our time. Can you believe
Reason?
that?
Did you say reason.org?
No, a reason writer was making fun
.com.
of
Yeah, he was.
other
Yeah,
people
he
who
was.
call it
Free the
civil
nipple.
rights issue.
Free the
It's
nipple.
free the nipple.
Oh man.
Yes.
So I oh gosh, guys, I think it's like,
Hey, why do you think we have you on this show? Come on,
Ah.
give us some expertise.
I mean, I know that we have to have distinct rules and not just let police officers or civil servants make on the spot calls about these things. But don't you feel like I feel that when you're in public, there's a difference, a noticeable difference between indecent exposure and a poor mom who just needs to nurse her kid at the bus stop and didn't happen to bring the right kind of blanket, or her blanket falls off of her shoulder. I mean, to me, it's like, this is kind of like the flopping culture that we talked about in the last podcast, but people get offended at everything, and they pretend like there's all these boogeymen out there who don't want women to be able to breastfeed when they need to breastfeed, and I just don't think that those people really exist.
They're social justice warriors.
Oh, is this?
If I'm uncomfortable doing this, everyone should be uncomfortable, and none of you can.
I will say,
your wife.
I think there's two
breastfeeds, right?
sides. Of course,
mine does.
Yeah, there's
But
two
it's the way to
sides
go.
to this. There's two sides to this. Yeah, even sometimes she even breastfeeds the kids. Sorry, that one was just sitting there all teed up.
Well, at least I didn't say breastfeed me. That is like a whole nother.
No, listen, there's always two sides to this. Hadley's just like, what am I doing on this podcast?
What's going on? She'll have kids one day, and it'll all become clear.
Yeah. So anyway, there's just two sides to this. I agree with you, Hadley, that there are very few people who are objecting to moms breastfeeding in public. I mean, who are these people? I mean, social justice warrior is right. I mean, like, really? You don't have better things to do than to complain about this. On the other hand, there's a certain kind of, and man, I'm getting in a lot of trouble here for stereotyping. Since when have we cared about that? There's a certain kind of woman, feminist, liberated woman who
doesn't shave,
who does not breastfeed, makes no effort at discretion at all. And this
There's
does
a certain
happen.
type of woman. They live
There's
in
a certain
Missoula.
type of woman who is flaunting her freedom to breastfeed in public and just whip the shirt up and just doesn't even bother being discreet about it. And there are certain social contexts and places in public where that's kind of
Awkward.
I would say I would agree with you that that's inappropriate, but I don't know that it should be illegal. I mean, I think if someone's doing that on my bus, I just feel like I'm going to look the other way. You know, maybe she is being a little not discreet or a little, I don't want to say she's flaunting it or showing it off, but maybe she's very proud to be a breastfeeding mom in a public place. I might just look the other way.
Well, see, and you bring up the point that bugs me the most is that anytime somebody doesn't like something, they feel like the only answer to this
is a law.
Is legislation. It's not like, oh, I can just go over and I can go choose another baker. No, it's legislation. Oh, I can choose to look away on the bus with the woman breastfeeding. No, it's legislation. It's like, come on, people, really? Really?
Yeah, and I just think of all the things that could be the civil rights issue of our time, even the women's rights issue of our time. I mean, look around the world. There's a lot worse things than being asked to conceal your breasts in public. You know, there's women who are being forced into marriages as children, and there's countries and cultures that endorse honor killings and FGM, and I mean, the list goes on, but freeing the nipple is not the civil rights issue.
There are millions of women in the world who are being asked to cover absolutely everything.
Yeah, and I generally don't like the, oh, well, some people have it worse, so this isn't really a problem. But I think this whole...
But you just did it.
This whole thing about, women aren't free because they're not free to go shirtless. Not only do I think it's the wrong focus, but I think pulling the breastfeeding discussion into this, to me, they're like two separate issues. You know, if you want to go tan in the park without a shirt, that's one thing. If you want to breastfeed your child, if you just had a baby, like, I just feel like all bets are off. Like, you should be able to do a whole host of things, like take a nap in public if you want.
If you just had, yeah.
Just take it easy, mama.
Yeah, I mean, wide cultural societal leeway for moms is a good policy. I agree.
Pro-family.
But I also agree, too. I mean, when I was having this discussion, I did not realize, and I have to confess, I did not realize we were talking about, there are people who are advocating for laws about this, you know, and that's where I just think our culture, really, we need a law for everything, right?
Well, and some of the left-wing women's groups are upset with Democrats about this because some Democrats propose legislation to require certain public places like airports to provide a separate room for nursing mothers. And so that's nice that they could have a separate private space they could go to. And I think, I don't want to mandate that any business have to provide this. I think it'd be a nice service, and I think smart businesses might want to think about providing this, right?
Right.
But Then the left-wing women's groups say, well, which is it? Are we supposed to be ashamed of our bodies and hide in the private room? Or shouldn't we fight? Shouldn't we instead fight for the freedom to be in public and expose ourselves if we want that right? And so there's a little bit of, schizophrenia on the issue on the left because they don't know whether they should mandate that businesses provide the private room or whether they should mandate that everybody
It's all
just
public. Yeah.
shut up and be happy with the
So
exposed
postmodernism
boobs.
is at odds with itself here.
It's nice when we have a fixed point of orientation, our dead reckoning, if you will.
Yes.
To kind of help guide us through
Help guide us through some of that. Have a little
Now,
dead reckoning.
Can you guys? I'm very excited for this next little bit.
Next segment.
Yes, this next little bit of the show. It's a game we're calling Nerd versus Nerd.
All right.
Okay.
Is
And
there
what-
theme
here's-
music for this part?
There is theme music. You
Oh,
ready?
he's setting it
Ready?
up first here, I think.
There you go. Now, Nerd versus Nerd. Here's how this game goes.
You're on,
okay?
Hadley. You're on.
Here's how this game goes. I'm gonna give you guys a word, and this is generally a word found in internet obscurity, and it is a word that generally is not in a dictionary. So
Okay.
it's a cultural term, and you guys need to each come up with the definition for it, and then you who has the closest definition gets a big pat on the back.
Bragging rights.
Bragging rights.
All right.
Bragging rights. And
Nerd versus nerd.
We'll keep score.
Sort of
Hadley,
like Mad
here's the
Magazine's
thing.
Spy versus
Well, here's
Spy.
the thing. Here's the thing. So everybody
Which
knows.
was racist, by the way, because one of the spies was
Black and the other was white.
mhm.
Yeah. So is checkers racist because one's red and one's black?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, so the Hadley prides herself on being hip with all of the terms, and Brian is just
Clueless.
stupid smart. So
Oh. Thank you, Jay. I was not expecting a compliment
right. So
to
here's,
come after that.
Hadley, since you have the self-proclaimed wherewithal, I'm going to let you take the first crack at this. Here's your word. Your word is barn.
Barn? Like
Barn.
B-A-R-N?
B-A-R-N.
That is in a dictionary.
It is in the dictionary, but in this case, it is used.
It's a slang term.
It's a slang term.
Internet
It's a
slang,
term.
particularly, or
Particularly internet.
internet
slang.
slang? Okay.
Yeah, this is how we stay. This is how us old geezers stay up on internet culture.
Oh, I'm going to say barn means to crash a party or to crash an event. I'm going to use it as a verb, to barn.
As a verb. All right, to barn.
Maggie's having a party Friday. Oh, I didn't get invited. No problem. Let's just barn that.
Wow, that's actually
She's good.
She's good.
Yeah.
that is really good.
But it's not fair because I immediately thought it was a verb, too. To barn. So I have to come up with something different. Even though I think she might be right. No, I think to barn is to I have no idea. I am so out of it. To barn.
well, that's the fun
is
part about this
to-
game. It's like whoever gets closest. See.
I think to barn is to like ostracize or kick out of your group of friends or your community somebody else. You're like going to lock them away in the barn. So we're going to barn her or barn him.
Barn kind of like banning.
Like ban him, but only barn him. And
right.
it also has the connotation that whomever we are banning is basically has the same quality as like cow manure. Right? It's in a
farm
barn.
animal.
It's a scatological reference as well. Okay, so to barn is particularly offensive term among younger millennials.
All right, well, here it is.
That's
Okay.
my guess. No, play the
Barn.
music. Play the music. Give us come on. Yeah, there we go. And the answer is
Barn is short for barnacle, meaning a person who is clingy or latches on. I.e., my ex was a total barn, or Obama is a total barn about immigration.
You know what? I think I'm closer. I think I'm closer because it has the connotation that the clingy
I said
person
to crash a party.
But the clingy person is the one you're trying to get rid of and ostracize. Yours has no resemblance to the
If someone's
reality.
a barnacle, they might crash your party, and you wouldn't like that. If they're clingy, they'll crash your party.
There is context for both. I don't know. We might have to have a...
The thing about nerd versus nerd, though, is the winner is still a loser. Like, if you win a contest called nerd versus nerd, that's just...
well,
Do you think that nerds
I'm just
are
saying
losers?
it's okay. It's okay with me if Brian wins.
I'm gonna consult. I'm gonna consult with Remley
as to who
wins, and then I'll let you know next episode.
Next week. Okay.
So
we can keep a running tally.
You can either keep your crown or fight to take it.
Okay.
From the
I
other
like
person.
it.
Double or nothing next time.
Okay,
Double or
sounds
nothing.
good.
All right. SCOTUS Watch. Obviously, they
I'm sorry.
haven't...
Did you say that sounded like something off color?
That's actually a hashtag. SCOTUS Watch.
Oh, SCOTUS.
Yeah,
SCOTUS. You're talking about the Supreme Court of the United
SCOTUS
States.
cracks me up. It's kind of like in the political sphere, and I really didn't realize this till hanging out with you two, but it's kind of like the World Cup, of politics. It's like the World Cup of society and politics. Oh, they're in session.
SCOTUS Watch.
What's the bracket count? Where are they at here? How's the team doing? And the Skim. Obviously, if you're not checking out the Skim, I would check out the Skim. It's not a sponsorship. It's just I really enjoy it. They have dubbed. They've given a whole little breakdown.
Yes.
And have titled them like the Supremes.
The Supreme.
And so it's like a group, and then they've described each character in the group based on their skills, like athletes or something.
Sounds pretty fun.
They really are characters. I mean, I feel like I know them after all the years. I feel like
There's a
Follow
few
for
that
my
I
favorite.
don't. There's a few that I don't feel like I know at all. Kagan, I don't get at all. Other than every time I've listened to an oral argument, everything she says is hardly coherent. But
you don't have to get someone to know them, though.
Oh, okay, right. Well, I know where she stands politically. I know how she's going to rule on everything.
Yeah.
So, well, have we had? Obviously, we've had a few, but is there?
No,
is
all
there
the important
updates
cases
in the
have been
last couple
left.
weeks?
All the important cases have been left till like the last week,
Next
the last
week of
day.
June, like last week of June.
No, I think it's like this. Isn't it this Thursday?
This week, basically.
Thursday or Friday.
They've got 3 days left on their calendar when they're going to be issuing decisions. And I don't know if you have anything else in mind, Brian, but to me, there's just two big cases left. It's going to be King versus Burwell, which we talked about on the last podcast, and it's about health care, and then the same-sex marriage case.
The Obergefell case. I think I said that properly.
Obergefell?
Obergefell. Yeah, that's good. And yeah,
so,
in perpetuity, poor lawyers are going to have to be talking about the Obergefell case, right? It's like, really, you couldn't pick a person with an easier to say last name? Like,
SCOTUS Obergefell.
Get a new plaintiff.
But the question is, will they do same-sex marriage on Friday and make it like a Friday news dump because they don't want the whole week of news to be dedicated to this decision? Or will they wait until Monday because that's the last day of their session?
The whole weekend is going to be a new all weekend. It's either going to be what are they going to decide, or they just ruled X on same-sex marriage.
Yeah, the weekend's going to be kind of taken up with it anyway. I just think that I suspect they're going to leave it for the last day. I think they're going to get in. They're going to give their ruling. It's going to be,
and then they can disappear.
It's going to be a ruling in favor of a constitutional right for same-sex marriage, from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea, and then they're going to get out of town as fast as they can.
They can disappear into
in black limousines with smoky mirrors.
So that probably, in my view, my prognostication is then the healthcare decision will come down
Friday.
I
think you're right. That's my sense of it. I mean, obviously, I hope that the Obergefell case doesn't come out that way, but I have absolutely zero faith in Anthony Kennedy. I have faith in God, and I've asked God to change Anthony Kennedy, but, humanly speaking, I don't see any reason to think that he's going to rule against same-sex marriage. I think a lot of people, when he came out in the oral argument so aggressively, you're asking us to change millennia of tradition. How can you ask us to do this? He says this to the solicitor, and of course, all the liberals had a collective, gulp, right? Oh, no, Kennedy's against us. That is classic passive-aggressive behavior to me. I think he loves his position as the swing, and he was so aggressive against their side that I just think he's just playing with us. I don't take that seriously at all.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say one more thing, and that's about the healthcare decision. And I think given what we've seen in the past couple of cases related to the Affordable Care Act, Roberts goes down in history as the guy who saved Obamacare with his vote upholding the individual mandate and
Right.
related penalty as a use of Congress's taxing power. And this is 2012. And so now I think Roberts is in this position where he can side with that side again, or he can be known as the guy who basically, changed Obamacare forever. And I don't think that Roberts is going to separate from Kennedy either way. So I think it's going to be 6-3 or 5-4. But in any case, I think Kennedy and Roberts go together.
Why do you say that?
Because I think Roberts doesn't want to be the one who was different. I think Kennedy was on the opposite side of the individual mandate decision in 2012. Kennedy thought that the individual mandate and related penalty was unconstitutional, and he sided with the minority. But this time I think Roberts wants to have, he doesn't want to be talked about so much as the one who made this decision go either way.
Interesting.
Personal egos or something.
I gave my prediction on the same-sex marriage case, and I don't have any particular expertise on the healthcare case as you do, Hadley. But I'm going to actually make a prediction. And
Okay.
I want to know if you have a prediction.
Okay.
My prediction is that on the healthcare case, they rule wrongly. In other words, they say that the subsidies are constitutional under the law. And I just have that sense because of the way Roberts handled the last Obamacare case. I mean, his modus operandi was, I am going to read this statute in the most favorable light I possibly can, to the extent that he actually rewrote the law in his head to come up with that decision. And I think if that's his bent, if his bent is I'm going to read a statute so favorably I actually rewrite it in my head, I don't see why he wouldn't do that in this case.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the government's going to win this one.
Yeah.
And I always predict things that way. I've learned over time not to get my hopes up about anything.
Right.
I started working in politics in 2009, for crying out loud.
And
There
now
haven't been a lot of victories
Yeah, and now you're
since then.
you're already cynical.
Yeah, I'm already cynical. But I think it's good to kind of brace for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But it'll be a complicated scenario for Republicans, even if they win.
Yeah,
so
sure will.
This is a sticky situation. I can feel Jay's boredom right now.
No,
Right.
what's
I feel
your
like
no?
we're-
Actually, I'm sitting here wondering what your prediction is for since we're taking odds. I mean, sorry, this isn't a Vegas show. Since we're taking who's gonna do what? What are you thinking for gay marriage?
I say no bet, Brian. I agree with his prognostication.
Yeah.
So if there's no bet, nobody's going to win anything.
Yeah, nobody's going to win
anything
anything.
here.
The whole country's going to
Unless Jay wants to take
the
us
country
on.
is the country's going to lose. Okay, that's
I'm
what
gonna
I
be
think
the
is going to
house.
happen here. So, were you talking about the Donald earlier?
Yeah. We shall
my goodness.
We shall overcome. I bring him up because it's
You're such a loser. You're a
'Cause it's-
loser.
funny. Is he serious?
I
Is
don't
he
know
really
what the man-
serious?
This is a hairy situation for sure. Oh, I don't know. It's funny because you said something about the Supreme Court and you said, oh, those personal egos. And I think this is kind of one of those situations. I think people forget often that politicians are real human beings. And
I don't
they
think
have-
that's true for Donald Trump. Is he a
they
real
have-
human being?
Yeah, I think he is. And I think with Mitt Romney, I think one of the reasons he ran was because he's got this father-son thing with his dad, and they're politicians, and he's worked so long, and he's run for president other times. It was a goal that he needed to fulfill, a personal goal, but I don't think he really had it in his heart. I'm going to get in trouble with the Romney people for saying this, but I never really felt like he was gonna be doing this to serve the country. I kind of felt like it was just his time and just kind of
A
the
thing to
stage of his
do. The
career.
next
thing to do, the next big thing to do. And I think Donald Trump's kind of the same way. What more can he do?
I don't know. I think Donald Trump
he can
is.
pay his debts and
I think
stop
Donald
going
Trump
into
is-
bankruptcy. And
I think Donald Trump is bored.
I think that's probably true.
So it's a thing to do. Run for president.
I think that if you open up the dictionary and look up ego, it says C. Trump, Donald. Right? I mean, this guy This guy. I just want to point out a few things. I'm going to give you a few wonderful Donald Trump highlights. Right, Donald Trump is running for the nomination for the Grand Old Party, the Republican Party, and so that's the
Emphasis on old.
conservative right-wing party in this country. I want to here's a few famous tweets from Donald Trump. National Review may be going out of business because of the really pathetic job being done by Jonah Goldberg. No talent means death. Sad. That's a real tweet. Jonah Goldberg has no talent. He also tweeted, "Oh, this is great. Goldberg is truly dumb as a rock. Why does Brett Baer put this dummy on his show?" But my favorite is he then insults Steve Hayes. How does a failed writer and pundit like Stephen F. Hayes, with no success and little talent, get away with criticizing candidates? Now, for you listeners who are not aware, Jonah Goldberg and Steve Hayes, and how about Charles Krauthammer, whom he called overrated and a loser. So guys like Hayes and Goldberg and Krauthammer are the most brilliant opinion writers on the right side of the political aisle. And
well, not only, Donald Trump's wrong on a lot of the issues, too. I mean, he's wrong from the Republican perspective.
Yeah, but that's why this thing has to be a joke, right? I mean...
It has to be a joke.
He can't be really serious about this.
It would be a joke if he were a Democrat, but since he's a Republican, it's like an opportunity for the mainstream media to ridicule Republicans.
Right, and take him seriously, like he really has some kind of a chance here. I mean, the man is a buffoon. He's a clown.
And Republicans need more candidates in the mix, more useless candidates in the mix.
We certainly don't. We have actually very few useless candidates in the mix.
Well, my thought about Donald Trump is maybe the role he can play is being so ridiculous that by comparison, the other Republican candidates, even if they say something a little off color one day, they still look, by comparison to Donald Trump, they still look very serious and very reasonable.
Jeb Bush looks normal.
He's a loser. He's fired.
You get all these.
He's a loser.
This 26. I'm not going to talk about 2016 yet. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that.
We are going to have plenty of time.
Plenty.
I can't believe
of time.
I just listen. When I think in my quiet moments that there exist across this fruited plain rational adult human beings that are over the age of 18 and allowed to vote, who look at a man like Donald Trump and think, I think I'm going to vote for him. I kind of get in the depths of despair, okay? I mean, what a con man. This guy is not a serious human being.
He's known for his comb over, and you're fired. That's it.
He's a buffoon.
But the top of his head doesn't look as ridiculous as Vermin Supreme's head.
No.
What is
Do you guys know Vermin Supreme?
No, who's
he's
Vermin
a candidate.
Supreme?
He's a candidate for president, Brian.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he totally
is. This
At least in New Hampshire, he is.
That's funny. It reminds me of that guy. Remember that guy from Brooklyn who ran for mayor of New York City, and his political party was called The Rent Is Too Damn High?
Oh, yeah.
You remember that guy? The rent.
But which party was he a part of?
The Rent Is Too Damn High. He just made up his own party. Yep.
See,
Okay.
Vermin Supreme is going to
a
give us
Democrat.
free, and he's going to give us free ponies.
Really?
Yeah.
My girls would like that.
But he's a Democrat, guys. He's a Democrat, which is great.
That is great.
Which is
so in other words,
so great.
They have a buffoon running for president too, in addition to Hillary.
Right, but Vermin Supreme doesn't get nearly the amount of attention I think he deserves.
Yeah, because if Donald Trump is going to get all this airtime, Vermin Supreme should get the airtime. That's funny.
But if you listen to this guy, Vermin Supreme, like he's obviously trying to be a parody of what he thinks politicians are. Vermin, right?
Right, vermin.
But it's just so weird and ridiculous. Like his being a part of these debates just makes a mockery of our political process.
Is
he a part of a debate at all? I mean, I don't.
New Jersey, Hampshire,
or New Hampshire.
New Hampshire actually recorded a New Hampshire debate statewide, and they like.
And he was invited.
And then he sprinkled gay dust over everybody.
What exactly is gay dust?
I don't know. And they asked, he promised free ponies, and he said he's going to do whatever the people want just so they can get elected. He'll agree and promise to do everything they want, but he won't do it.
So this is just a piece of performance art.
Pretty
is
much,
really what we
yeah.
have going
One
on.
of his major issues is a mandatory toothbrushing law.
Mandatory toothbrushing law, yeah.
Okay, it's performance art.
Well, we'll include the link to the YouTube video in the show
Of
notes.
Vermin Supreme.
But I feel like if he were a Republican, he would be getting made fun of in a way that he's not. He'd be taken seriously in a way that he's not.
He's being
because he's a Democrat, he gets a pass.
Well,
he's ignored.
they'll take him serious as a Democrat.
But what's amazing is he's not getting ignored. He's being invited to a debate, which is
So I
kind of
think
a
in New
travesty.
Hampshire, I think you don't have to have a certain number of signatures to be a candidate. I think you just have to have like $1,000.
Oh wow,
or something.
Something
Okay.
far
All right.
too low.
Glad I don't live in New Hampshire.
That's ridiculous. Well, guess what time it is? It's time for Not the Onion News. Okay. This game is really simple, and this is a game we all three play as we go.
Cool.
Okay. So I'm gonna give you guys. It's right. This week is pitted against you and Brian Hadley. Okay?
Oh, Hadley and I are going at it again in another
Head
game
to
show.
head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next week it's gonna be Hadley and me going at it.
Okay.
So here's the deal. The Onion is full of ridiculous headlines.
Yes.
Okay? Real life is full of ridiculous headlines.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like where you're going with this, Jay.
yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you a real headline. Okay.
Okay.
And then I'm going to read to you a ridiculous headline, a not true headline,
Okay.
one that could be in the Onion.
All right.
It's probably just made up. Your goal, and again, we're going to keep a running tally between the three of us to see who's best at this.
Okay.
Your goal is to determine which one is the real headline and which one
one's
is the fake.
Okay, but I think we're going to have a discussion about really what is reality.
Reality.
You want to get
How
into
can we
you
even know what reality is?
Well, now
Matrix.
you're not only talking about metaphysics. You're now asking fundamental epistemological questions.
No,
And
this
do you
is,
really
this
want
should
to
be
get
the
into
Ask
this?
the Theologian segment.
Do we like... We'll bring it back. Do we look like the Wachowski brothers right here? I
Yeah.
mean, what is this metaphysical reality?
Okay, sorry. Onion versus
they're
onion.
Not, they're
Let's
not
do this.
Wachowski brothers anymore because one became a woman.
Serious?
Yeah. Did you not know that?
Guys,
It's totally true. The
Guys,
Wachowski brothers.
are we in the game yet? Is this
They
the
always
not the
wanted-
onion question?
No, this is not it.
That
No,
is
here we
not
go.
the
All right.
onion. One of them had the whole surgery and everything.
Stop.
Became a
The
woman.
whole surgery.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the first headline. All right. Dead people would be banned from driving in New Jersey under proposed law.
Okay.
I think that's real.
You think it's real? Brian?
It's so ridiculous that it just has to be real, and it sounds like something New Jerseyans would do.
I feel like this is part of a bigger like voter fraud question, because
That's-
can dead
that's
people
gotta
vote?
be
Can
what
dead
it
people
is.
get Social
Right.
Security benefits? Can
have driver's licenses.
they're going to comb
You could
through
be
their
right.
DMV
You
records?
guys haven't had. You guys
I
haven't
want to
heard.
hear. I think the
haven't
game
heard
should
the
work.
next
I
one.
want to hear them both and then decide.
I was gonna let that settle with you guys. You can hear them both.
I just go with my gut. I just have
You
to go
can
with
hear
my
them
gut.
both. Okay.
Are you making your decision without hearing both headlines? I would
No, let me hear
both.
the second one.
Yeah, you want to hear
Let
the
me
second
hear
one?
Yes, and that's totally legit. You
Yeah.
can do that. Here's the second headline. Virginia County, Virginia, outlaws marriage to first cousins.
Ooh.
I'm going to say that's the onion. There's only two choices, right?
Yeah. It's,
Okay,
it's-
so
yeah.
I'm going with dead people are real and
either fake or
marriage
real.
to first cousins is not real. Because I think that you would think that by now there would be.
Yes,
Also, I don't
precisely.
think that. Oh gosh, aren't marriage
what
laws
was
a
it?
state thing?
What wasn't the?
Well, this
what
is a
was
Not a
state
county thing?
This is a. s-
This is a state thing, but it's also was it the?
Actually, that doesn't work. If
Wasn't
it's a
there was
county
a
thing.
state? Wasn't there a law that they're trying? Like they just repealed a law in South Carolina that was like 200 years old and something completely obscure.
Yeah, but this I think the tell here is that consanguinity laws, which is what we're talking about.
I don't even know
marrying-
that. I don't even know that.
This should be the nerd versus nerd segment. Anyway,
Yes, sang is
Con-
a root
con-
from
Constant-
blood.
Constantinople.
consanguinity.
Sanguine is in
sanguine.
like the
Con,
con
like with,
together,
together.
together with sanguine.
sanguine.
See, I'm not I'm not as
close
dumb as
blood,
you
close
make me out
relations.
to be.
Consanguinity laws have been in place since time immemorial in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I don't believe that up until just recently you could marry your first cousin in Virginia. So I think that's the tell. I think that's got to be the onion.
All right, you guys are both correct.
Yes.
Yay! All right.
So
Score
yes,
one.
New Jersey did just are now hoping to pass a new law that would ban people from driving to getting driver's license if they're dead.
Okay, so I was on a segment one time, a Fox debate with a Democrat, and I was talking about voter fraud, and I said, of course we want to remove the deceased from our voter registration rolls,
Right.
so that you don't have dead people voting. And he laughed at me because, of course, dead people aren't going to vote. Dead people can't possibly vote. But what I meant was you have people going into their polling place and saying,
Pretending to be the dead
I am
person.
so-and-so,
Right.
and there's no ID requirement in a lot of places, so dead people vote in that way. Someone votes for them.
They do
think
it
we
all the
just need
time.
some law reform. I think there's some laws in the books that just need to disappear. Some ridiculousness.
Yeah, that's true.
So
You would think with the technology we have that
Yeah.
when someone dies, you could make it so that their digital life and their records change.
I kind of hope that doesn't happen.
No,
because
that's just too centralized for
it's
me.
too-
If
yeah,
you
a
could
little
just
too-
wipe everything out, I don't know.
I don't mean that it all goes away. I mean it changes. Your status should change to deceased on
Yes.
your government records.
It should.
But
Yes.
Well, last topic, and then we'll get to what's on your playlist. Hadley, we teased this earlier in the show, but you recently hosted a podcast with your organization, Independent Women's Forum, about over-the-counter birth control. Now, as I was listening to it, it seemed like it's a good thing. I mean, it would lower costs. It'd make things more accessible. At your parties, you could hand out, BC with a little E and, cover your bases there. What are your, is that true? Or should I be thinking about something else?
I mean, there's always other considerations to make. I think it's a very personal decision about whether or not a woman wants to use contraception and what kind. But given the legal landscape around this stuff, I mean, I don't know if you guys realize, but under the Obama administration, Plan B, or the morning after pill, has become available over the counter. First, it became available behind the counter where you have to show your ID and ask for it and sign your name in a book and get some counseling. And now it's just straight up over the counter. You can go to a pharmacy if the pharmacist sells it, and you can buy the morning after pill. And chemically, that's basically the same chemicals that you find in other oral contraceptives. And I guess from my perspective, if Plan B is going to be available over the counter, I think Plan A should be available over the counter, because I think it's better to act before the fact always.
I don't understand why why is it even being debated?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, it's one of those Democrat versus Republican things, because, in the last election cycle, there was a lot of discussion about how Republicans are so opposed to birth control, and they want to take away women's access to birth control. If I heard it once, I heard it 1,000 times.
Right.
And that really started with a requirement in the Affordable Care Act that insurance companies provide first dollar coverage for all FDA-approved contraceptive methods.
Right.
And this includes intrauterine devices. This includes the morning after pill, and even a pill called Ella that you can take up to 72 hours after having sex. And so some of these things, it's questionable, how they work. And even the best scientists don't understand the main method of action for some of these drugs. And it caused the whole Hobby Lobby dispute about whether or not employers should be required to provide this kind of insurance coverage. But the bottom line is Republicans weren't in favor of that requirement, just like they're not in favor of the rest of the Affordable Care Act. It's about the mandate. It's not about the birth control, but it's about the mandate. And now, Republicans have been pushing back, especially my senator from the state of Colorado, Cory Gardner, ran against Mark Udall in the last election cycle and made a commercial and said straight, a lot of his speaking engagements, he said, I'm in favor of making birth control over the counter. And now that he is in the Senate, he's pushing proposed legislation, to give it fast-track status at the FDA. So that's where we're at with it.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I wonder, is that going to alleviate some of the political conflicts that we're having over these pills? I mean, You think of Hobby Lobby, and some of these drugs are abortifacients, and there are people who don't want to provide them. Is the idea here that if we make it over the counter, it can just be on an individual basis? If you want this, go get it. It's between you and your pharmacist, and we're kind of, let's get all the third parties out of the birth control business. Is that what's going on here?
That would be great. I mean, in order for that to happen, we'd really need two things. We'd need birth control to be available over the counter, but mainly we would need for this requirement in the Affordable Care Act to no longer be in place. Right. And they don't have to both happen at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. You could have over-the-counter birth control options for some women who wanted to do it that way, or you could have prescription birth control pills that you would basically want to get the prescription so that your insurance company would pay for the pills for you rather than you paying on your own. But from an economic perspective, it'd be so much better if women paid for this stuff on their own, because then the consumption stays with the consumer. We're not paying for things in pools, which is never a good idea. You go out to lunch with a bunch of your buddies. Yep. Everybody's going to get an appetizer. Everybody's going to get an extra beer instead of let's just pay for what we consume. Right.
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it. I hadn't heard it put that way. So who opposes this idea of putting, making these things available over the counter?
A lot of left-leaning groups, and I think their fear-mongering about it has to do with who pays. And all the scientific organizations, like the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, say that it would be fine to make birth control available over the counter. But like Planned Parenthood and NARAL and all these pro-choice organizations, they don't want to see this undermine the payment structure that requires everybody who has insurance basically to be a part of this payment scheme.
They're obsessed, Hadley, with making other people buy their birth control. What is going? I don't get this. This is a whole Hobby Lobby thing. You pay Sandra Fluck, pay for my birth control. What is going on here? What ideologically is driving that? I don't get it.
Well, I think it's kind of similar to the neck tattoo. There's no room in society for people who don't want to basically approve of this drug or this decision, or the culture wars all stem from questions that we're supposed to be answering together that I think we'd be better off answering individually. Questions about what is taught in school about sex ed could be solved by school choice. Give individuals and families more choice about where to send their kids to school, and then you don't have to agree with your neighbors about what your fifth graders are getting taught. It's the same thing with the birth control debate. I mean, if we didn't all have to pay for it together, we wouldn't have to agree on which drugs we find morally acceptable or morally objectionable.
You are such an R.
That is the best argument I've ever heard.
You are such an RWNJ.
I'm nut job. I'm a nut job.
That makes so much sense.
I know.
I have a hard time believing that there's people out there who wouldn't totally agree with that.
No, I think that's a winning message, and I really hope that gains some ground in our culture, because really right now there's this demand for approval, and that's what I mean. It's interesting that the Apostle Paul in Romans 1 ends that amazing chapter, that whole litany of how a culture spirals out of control. And by the way, it's all related to worship, the abandonment of true worship, and then it's all about sex. There's a reason for that. Those two things are very well connected. But it's interesting, he gives the very last verse of that chapter, and he says, not only do they practice these things, but they approve of those who did them. It's interesting, in a cultural drift or slide, it is always the demand for approval that kind of is the final nail, right? And I think that's where we're at culturally. You will approve, or else you're going to show your approval by buying my birth control. You're going to subsidize my behavior. It's remarkable.
Right, and then you combine that with what Jay was talking about earlier, where we always try to solve problems with a law, and usually a federal law these days. I mean, everybody's looking, we've been taught, I think, as a society to look at the federal government for answers, right. And so not only do we have to approve of other people's decisions, but now there's laws that attempt to sort of legitimize the approval or disapproval of certain actions.
Hey, Justice Kennedy said it in the oral argument. The state confers dignity. His understanding of marriage and marriage licenses is that is the state conferring dignity on a relationship. And I thought, what a warped concept of the state's role, right? I'm sorry, the state recognizes things. It's not conferring dignity on a relationship. So anyway, just that was a
in terms of
rabbit trail,
general
but
conferring dignity. It seems like God would be the only one to do that.
God does it. Yeah.
What do you guys think about this birth control stuff?
I think it's a ridiculous kind of argument. I think it makes more sense to have it over the counter and then it's in the hands of the individual if they want to participate or take it or not. It's not paid for by Obamacare stuff. That just makes it all really complicated.
It's a very complicated topic, and I'm of two minds.
So that's my opinion.
I'm of two minds about it. I am not a Roman Catholic. I do not believe that all forms of birth control are wrong. I don't believe that the Sex Act must always be open to children. I don't believe the Bible teaches that, and I think it gives great individual liberty with married couples to make those sorts of decisions. So on the one hand, I pretty firmly believe that. On the other hand, Mary Eberstadt at Stanford University has been writing for years. She wrote the great book Adam and Eve After the Pill, and she has been just documenting the sexual revolution as a consequence of the pill, and that a massive cultural shift took place when we were able to divorce sex from procreation. Once we were able to liberate sex from any consequences of having kids, that led to a cascading of all kinds of deleterious cultural consequences, the breakdown of the family. I am also persuaded by that argument. So when I say
I would agree with that. I agree with a lot of that.
When I say I'm of two minds, I really am of two minds. I think there should be freedom and liberty on these things. I'm against abortifacient pills as a matter of principle. I'm not against birth control as such, and yet I see the cultural consequences of just widespread birth control. And that's cause for concern.
Well, condoms mainly do the same thing that oral contraceptives do, except for condoms also act to at least provide some protection against STDs, which the pill doesn't do. But condoms are easily available at any drugstore. So I think we're kind of already there. And to me, it's a question of, should women have to go get a pat on the head from their doctor and say, "Oh yeah, I think you can go"?
No, I'm with you there.
Take that.
I'm with
and I feel like that's
you there,
paternalistic, and I don't like that. And it's not necessary. A lot of the things that your doctor does for you, it doesn't have to do with screening you.
It's a waste of our medical resources.
It is that, and I just wanted to add one more thing about the Eberstadt thing and the divorce of procreation and sex. That horse is out of the barn. The cat is out of the bag. I mean, in no way do I think we're going to return to some kind of mythic age where birth control doesn't exist. Okay, so we have to live as Christians. We have to live in the world we're in, not the one that we wish that we were in. And so I think there's just no putting the cat back in the bag. This is what we've got.
To coin a phrase, to stay in the same vein. Once the baby comes out, it never really goes back in.
No putting that baby back in. As much as one of my kids in particular, one of my daughters, we always joke she wants to crawl back in. The real mama's girl. She really wants to just be back in the womb.
I hear that phrase. Every time I hear that phrase, and it's not frequent, but every time I hear it, my skin crawls a little bit. 'Cause I'm like, that's just a disgusting concept, like crawling back.
I can't say that I've heard that phrase maybe ever.
Well, I don't know that it's a common phrase. I'm just saying that that's the way our mama's girl acts. She just clingy, just really wants to be back in the
Well, one day, the reality is one day she may be asking for your counsel on stuff like this. Like, I'm a married woman, and it's something that I have to think about. But to me, it's a personal decision. And I guess as such, I feel like I should be able to go to my pharmacist about this instead of having to talk it over with my doctor if it's really not relevant. And
or even worse, your insurance agent.
Right, exactly. And I just don't think, sure, we can have some reasonable middle ground. Like, it could be behind the counter. There could be, I'm sure, like tobacco and alcohol. You could have an age limit. You could say, only if you're this old you can buy this stuff. Well,
I think that just
there's a lot
that kind of goes without saying. I think, but I don't know. Yeah, or a parental
Yeah, but I think
permission.
you can be like really young and get Plan B, which is really sad to me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying there could be some parental permission or something.
Best of both worlds, maybe. So what's on your playlist? Here's something from mine. We have a Spotify playlist.
You're weird.
If you go to Spotify, look up Dead Reckoning Digital, all one word. It's our user account. We maintain a Dead Reckoning radio playlist. I add a few tracks, Brian adds a few tracks, and Hadley adds a few tracks. And Brian and I were discussing before the show that this is not designed to this is not going to be your curate. We're just throwing stuff in here so you can find new stuff to add to your playlist because this is going to be so eclectic.
Yeah, you're not going to want to hit play and play through this playlist. It's just too wildly
It's too wild
divergent.
because here's something from my list: Scratch Bandits crew, turntablists, DJs, and then we're going to move to a selection from Brian.
Yeah, you should have played the other one, but
Booth of Glass.
Yeah, Booth of Glass.
Should I put Might As Well Dance?
There we go.
All right.
Oh, this is the great singer-songwriter Patty Larkin, who's my favorite singer-songwriter, and this is an album from 1993. It is fresh. It's awesome. She's a great guitar player.
Sounds like it's from 1993.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It sounds fresh.
Well, it does sound a little bit like something Hadley would have on the list.
Hey, it's country radio.
Yeah.
Who is this, Hadley?
Yeah. The name of the song is Yeah.
Oh.
And Joe Nichols, who sings it, says yeah about
100
every other
times?
line. About 100 times.
Is it followed by girl? Yeah, girl.
He probably says girl several times.
In a hayfield. In a hayfield, and
You know, have you ever
you look
noticed
so
that
great
guys,
in your short
guys
shorts, and it's a summer evening, and the bugs are out, and we're drinking strawberry wine and dancing till dawn.
Have you ever noticed though,
Every
that,
song's the same.
that
Sounds
musicians have these romantic flings in terribly uncomfortable places?
It's true.
Hayfields.
Down by the river.
Down by the river. Nickelback in the backseat of his car. I'm
Bed of a truck. Have you ever laid around in a bed of a truck? It's like, no.
no. Not
You
at
and me
all.
going fishing in the dark, lying on our backs and counting the stars. Think of the bugs and the mosquitoes, and this just wouldn't be very good.
So what else did you add? What song is this, Hadley?
This is House Party by Sam Hunt.
I've never even heard of this guy. How long has he been
It's just
around?
Not long. He's kind of young, kind of new.
The flavor of the month.
He has like a cross
Maybe.
between like country and pop.
Yeah.
Would he be country pop?
Was somebody going to add a Zach
Yeah.
Brown song to this
I did.
list?
She did,
Did
yeah.
you?
I did.
Yeah.
Zach
Homegrown.
Brown is a really fine guitar player, and I don't. One of the things I don't like is that their overall sound and their mix totally drowns out his own guitar playing.
I'm going to see them July 3rd.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Next Friday.
Red Rocks?
Yeah. No,
Oh.
like Coors Field or something.
Oh,
well,
that'll
that's
be
not so
fun.
bad.
Coors Field will be fun. Yeah.
Okay.
That's not so bad at all.
It'll be
So
fun.
I'm not a big Zach Brown. I've listened to it a little bit, but I'm not a big Zach Brown one.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna close the show with this.
What
Two
is it?
Fingers. Two Fingers is the alias of Amon Tobin, another electronic DJ out of Brazil. I think I played something of his last week. Two Fingers is his hip hop oriented, just rhythm and beats
Okay.
sound. So he just released an EP last week called 6 Rhythms, and I'm a huge fan. Just saying. So this is why you don't want to necessarily just hit play on this playlist and let it
yeah,
go.
because you're going to get Zach Brown followed by this, and that's going to
That'd
really
be
wig
weird.
you out.
That would
Yeah.
just be weird. It'd be weird for me. It'd be weird for you.
But go check out these artists. You can add these songs to your own playlist on Spotify, and that's why we do it.
follow the list, and it'll be updated. You'll see it update about the time we record the show. So Hadley, what do you got going on the next couple weeks till we get back together?
I'm supposed to be backpacking in Maroon Bells.
Where's that?
Maroon Bells. It's near Aspen.
Oh,
Cool. Well, that's nice.
So I'm going to head up there for the weekend and hopefully survive. Also, I'm moving into my new house as soon as I get back from backpacking.
Oh,
Congratulations.
fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah, it stresses me
Congratulations.
though. Moving is stressful.
Are you carrying? Because I know
I
it's in the
agree.
same neighborhood, so you're just walking boxes down, or do you have people
No,
coming over
we're
to like load
we're
up a
getting
truck?
like a budget truck, and we're just gonna move the truck about a block down the street.
Did you call the deacons at your church and say, "Hey, I need help"?
No,
You should do
I
that.
should do that.
Is it just you
Absolutely.
guys? Brian and I
Uh,
will drive down and help you move.
Oh, that's so kind. We're gonna have some help from some of Aaron's colleagues at the hospital.
Okay. Good.
Sweet.
Let all the sick people die while they're helping you move. I understand.
Right. Well, it's intern week, guys. That means all the new doctors are in town.
Ooh.
So my husband and his cohort moves up.
They're graduating to
They're now
Nice.
senior residents,
Nice.
basically. And the interns are in town. So just think about that when you're going to the hospital.
in your area.
They say that late summer is a dangerous time at the hospital.
That's
Yeah, you know what
hysterical.
they call that person who graduated last in medical school?
Brian, what do you got going on?
Doctor. What do I got going on? Well, let's see. I'm going to be traveling after the 4th.
Anything exotic?
Go to California, doing a speaking gig. And other than that, no, don't have much going on. I'm kind of waiting for the rivers to go down a little bit. The water levels are really high and muddy, so the fishing isn't very good right now. But kind of waiting for that to, the rivers to go down. I'll get out on the water. It's been a long time.
And float.
No, I wade. I don't have a boat, so I just wade.
You could go fishing in the dark.
Lying on my back and counting the
Counting the
stars,
stars.
where the cool grass grows.
Oh my. Well, I'm not,
What about you?
I'm
doing?
off to St. Regis to celebrate the wedding of my brother who eloped. Her family's
that's
coming
right.
in. We're going
Oh,
out
that's
there, and then
cool.
I'm headed to little vacation / work trip to California after that for the week.
Well, that's where I'm going to see you. I'll be speaking
Yes.
there, and you're
Yeah.
actually attending.
It's
so
an
that's-
undisclosed, highly classified location, but I hope there's
That's true.
surfing involved.
There will be surfing involved.
Not to give away everything. But that said, Hadley, where can people find you on the internet and get to hang out with you and, all that stuff?
hang out with her.
They can find me on Twitter at Hadley Heath. And they can find more of my work, my professional work, at iwf.org.
As opposed to your unprofessional work, which we won't talk about. Just kidding.
My Olivia Pope side business, they cannot find any information about.
Brian, how about you, man?
Now you can find me on Twitter at Brian G. Matson. You can find me at my website, drbrianmatson.com.
drbrianmatson.com.
Yes.
Nice. I don't have any DRs in front of my name. You can follow me on Twitter at jfriesen, JAYFRIESEN. But I'm boring, so more importantly, follow Dead Reckoning on Twitter at DReckoningTV. Then you can follow us on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast feed on your favorite device. We like to show up in your hand.
Yes.
It sounds creepy, but it's kind of entertaining at the same
And you can do that by going to our website.
You can. And we'll be back with you in a couple weeks whenever we figure out when we want to get back to you or if there's something to talk about. Deal with, SCOTUS ramifications.
Yeah,
That said,
we're gonna
I'm
have
Jay
to think
Friesen
about that.
with Hadley Heath and Dr. Brian Matson, the two nerds in the room with Joe Schmo. With that, this is Dead Reckoning Radio. Have a great time.